when I would turn in papers, especially in Japan, I studied in Japan and it was all in Japanese. That was hard, turning in papers and knowing that I wasn't born Japanese. So it was really hard to do. So imagine coming to the States, for example, like you, and, writing in English. And also if you're writing a book, for example, that's kind of a scary thing. And there is an imposter syndrome, and it is real. So what I do is I help them realize that most people have not done what they've done. Most people have not come from another culture and, started writing and really writing for an audience and, seriously taking this seriously.
Hi, friends. This is Read and Write with Natasha podcast. My name is Natasha Tynes, and I'm an author and a journalist. In this channel, I talk about the writing life, review books, and interview authors. Hope you enjoy the journey. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. Today, I have with me Dr. Anne Randerson, who is a Brussels-based writer, writing coach, and former university lecturer in mindfulness and global leadership. She teaches online creative writing courses for San Diego Writers, Inc. and supports writers worldwide through her coaching practice, Cross-Cultural Horizons. Anne has published 2 novels under a pseudonym and is currently working on her 3rd. All right, Anne, so happy to finally connect with you online and have you on my podcast. I'm very impressed by all the work that you're doing, and I cannot wait to talk about it today. And first, I'd like to ask you about your books. What are these books, and what is the 3rd book you're working on? So the floor is yours, Anne. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you, Natasha, for inviting me today. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. I've watched some episodes and they're very interesting. I just love.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. So my first one, I'm going to show you. I don't know if people who are listening won't see this, but it's called Underwater Vibes. My pen name is Mickey Brent, and it takes place in Brussels, Belgium. And the sequel is Broad Awakening, which is a sequel to this book. And it also takes place in Brussels, Belgium, but also on Santorini Island in Greece. So,
nice.
Yeah. What I could do is I could maybe would you like me to read the back of it? Because that might be easier to explain.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so how did this survive that pivotal moment when admiration turns to attraction? Helen Dupont, a scientific translator in Brussels, Belgium, cherishes 2 things: flowers and her cat. She writes bad poetry to help her survive her painful existence with her husband until she is forced to undergo a radical lifestyle change. Sylvie Routard, a young Greek photographer, enters Hélène's world as her private swim coach. During their daily lessons, Hélène's admiration towards Sylvie turns to attraction. As unsettling feelings hijack Hélène's body and mind, daydreams featuring Sylvie enter her world, even her poems. While the 2 athletes increasingly feel underwater vibes in the pool, Hélène questions her relationship at home and everything else in life. So that's
wow, nice.
That's the first book. Yeah.
Wow. So for me, reading about this, it seems that your novel is about like international citizens or citizens from all over the world. And that's actually mirrors your story, because from my understanding, you were born in the US, but you've been outside of the US for a long time. You're in Europe, and you also teach international students. So I think my question is, when it comes to having this international perspective, which is kind of similar to mine, I guess you can tell from the accent, is who is your target audience when you write, right? Because whenever you publish, like, who is your audience, for me is like, is it Americans, expats, Europeans? Who do you have in mind, and who is most likely to purchase a book with such an international appeal?
Right. Well, yeah, that's a very good question. So I was born in the States, and I have lived abroad for most of my adult life, mainly in Brussels, Belgium, but I also lived in Asia and in other places in Europe, and also in Mexico for a while. So I write for an international audience. I feel like I'm a citizen of the world. So I'm writing for other people who have lived in many places like you and who are interested in different cultures and different backgrounds and different languages. I majored in French linguistics when I was in college. And so there's a lot of French in my first 2 books, especially since they take place in Brussels. So the target audience is mainly women reading my books, a lot of queer women reading my books as well, mainly in the United States, but also in the UK and also actually in Africa. Some people have taken my books there, a little bit underground, because it is a story about two women falling in love, and they were passed around. I know in Kenya, I gave a former student of mine quite a few of my books, and they got passed around, and they ended up in South Africa and other places. And it's starting conversations. My idea is to help everyone understand that, we're all humans and we're all connected and we're all citizens of the world, wherever we live.
And do you think, you mentioned most of the readers are in the US, which is intriguing because I was always under the impression, probably I'm mistaken, is that when people use foreign language in the book, especially people in the US, it kind of turned them off and they cannot continue reading. I think because the US tend to be very US centric, and it's not like you're in Europe where you're exposed to many languages. And for me, I face that in my books because I throw a lot of Arabic, and sometimes like how much Arabic is enough before people just like, I cannot do this. It's a lot of foreign language that turns them off. Do you ever grapple with this?
Well, that's a great question because I actually love reading books in historical fiction and contemporary fiction, like what I write, with other languages, because it helps me really understand the other cultures and really get into the story. So I just love that. I did get some responses on Goodreads. I noticed that at the beginning I was kind of crushed because I thought, there's French in here because I thought Americans should learn French. So what I did was I put quite a few words in French, but I kept repeating the same words so that they would learn, And some people really liked it, especially those who had studied French in school or who had gone to France or, Canada. But some people were saying there was too much French and they were kind of upset. So then I realized, okay, maybe I should scale back. And my next book now, it's finished, actually. I'm looking for a new publisher, but there's a lot of Spanish because there's a Mexican protagonist. So there's a lot of Spanish.
Oh.
But it takes place in California, in San Francisco. And I was raised pretty much bilingual English-Spanish. So I like having Spanish in the book. And too bad if people don't want to read it because, I guess as the author, I just want it to be authentic. And
that's interesting. As I told you, I'm always like worried about throwing Arabic words there. All right. But so your books do you had a publisher or did you self-publish? And how was the publishing journey? And I'm curious about publishing in Europe versus in the US.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it was a long publishing journey. I had never written books before. So I started teaching writing here in Brussels in 2006. So I was teaching writing mainly to expats in English for many years. And I kept trying, I kept submitting, and didn't really find a publisher until I did. Took me 13 years, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I rewrote my book 13 times. So at the beginning of every year in January, I would start over again and rewrite the book, every word, every sentence. A bit of a perfectionist. And I got a no. But I kept on writing with the same publisher, and I kept on writing, and I went to a conference in San Diego and saw the publisher there, and I said, "Oh, you rejected my book." And they said, "Oh, yeah, well, we do that. We do that. Usually we reject books." And they said, "Are you still writing?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I've written the book so many times since then." And they said, "Is it better?" And I said, "Yeah, so much better." And they said, "Submit it again. You never know." So I submitted. I waited about 6 months. And then I got this letter saying, "Yes, we'll take your book." And so that's how it started. But it took 13 years. So if you're writing a book, everybody listening here, just keep going because hopefully you'll find your publisher. And they published that book and the sequel. And now I'm looking for a new publisher that's maybe more international. This publisher is traditional. They're based in New York. But I'm looking more international because I feel like I want to go wider, bigger. And
yeah. Well, what a nice story. I really like that. It's the same publisher who rejected you, who took on your story. It's very, very inspiring. And so you also teach writing to expats. And how is that different? Like, do you customize the curriculum for an international audience, like versus if you're teaching the same curriculum to American students where you were born? How would you shift it to put it like in an international lens?
Yeah, that's a good question because I do teach both. At San Diego Writers Inc. right now, like I have a class on Friday, a workshop, and I do it online. They're mainly Americans there and mainly located in San Diego. Although I've brought some international friends who are coming from Austria and other countries in Europe, and they've participated as well. When I was teaching in Brussels, it was mainly expats, and so I would make it more culturally oriented because they would write about, like I had a student for many years, they kept taking the course. I had to keep revising it because they kept taking the course again and again. And she was from South Africa. And so she loved to write about her childhood and about all the animals there and safaris and things like that. So we would look at each country. And I had a German student too that wrote about the German culture, and another, and some of them wrote in their own languages too. So I had students who wrote in German, others who wrote in Italian, and others in different languages. And that was interesting when we would read together what we'd written each week, what they'd written. And some of the language, I understood all the languages actually, luckily, but some of the other participants didn't understand the languages. So it was kind of interesting.
Wow.
I taught at the European Commission and everyone was doing it in their own language. And then together at lunchtime, it was so much fun. And then they would read their work.
That's fascinating. Since you're based in Europe, I'm just curious about the reading culture in Europe versus the reading culture in the US. So I lived in London. I did my master's there. And I remember it was like the early 2000s. Everyone on the train was reading. I think that's not the case now because now it's everyone on their phone. But I haven't been to Europe in a while, so I'm not sure. But if, you travel between both countries, how is the reading culture differs between those two countries? Especially now with the phone and all the devices.
Yeah. Well, here I love taking trains and buses. I do that all the time, or I bike. I don't like to drive around here. So I do that. And I tend to watch the people. As a writer, like most, we sit and watch people and they take notes. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But most of the people are on their phones. Although I'm always very happy and feeling very refreshed when I see people, especially early in the morning, going into Brussels or Antwerp, reading books, even younger people reading, secondhand books. And I love seeing that. In the States, I don't notice the reading books as much. I do notice everybody in their car, often on their phone, and they tend to seem to read more American-based books. It might be stories of immigrants, which are really big right now in the States, but they're really reading a lot of American work, whereas in Europe, I tend to feel like people are looking at other countries more and not just reading the literature from their own country.
That's interesting. And I noticed that, I think we chatted a bit before we recorded, is that when I travel outside of the US, the books that I see are completely different than the books that you see in the US, like if you go to bookshops. And the US tends to be very US centric. And, I'm going to say we in the US have been living here for 20 years. Do you think we, I'm also an American citizen. Do you think we are missing out on, the diverse culture that Europe has to offer through its literature? Because Americans, I don't want to stereotype, but in general, they prefer more US-centric stories. Or maybe even the publishers actually pushing more US stories and less international stories.
Right. Well, publishing, as you know, is a business, and so the publishers are there to make money. So are the agents, and the booksellers, they're there to make money. And what's trending is what sells. I think the international lens is actually getting bigger and bigger, and I think more people in the States are more interested in that. However, they tend to be reading a lot of books that are written in the United States, but maybe, like I said, like the stories about people coming in, like immigrants. And that's, I think, pretty big right now, what I understand. I love to go to England and I go to London or other places and I buy the books there because I just love British writers in general, So I love reading the books, sometimes very quirky, very different, subtle undertones, not so like in your face sometimes. I love humor. Also, the Irish writers, Scottish writers, I just really kind of eat that stuff up. So I guess maybe because I'm based here as well, but also, explore American writers as well. It just depends on the story. It has to be a really good story, well written, and really touch me emotionally.
Who's big in Europe now? Like I remember when Elena Ferrante made it to the US and everyone was reading Elena Ferrante. Like these are You know Elena Ferrante, the Italian author who wrote that series of books based in Napoli, if you know her. But when like everyone was reading Elena Ferrante, at least in the US. So these are like some few European. And then there is the author, Frederick, what's his last name, who wrote Ove, A Man Called Ove. And these are at least the big European names that we get here in the US. What are the big names? Like, who are the Stephen Kings of Europe now?
I'm not really sure. Actually, I see people reading
Okay.
books, but I know there's some here. I mean, I live in Flanders, so everything here is in Dutch. So everyone around me is reading in Dutch. And I know that some of the names, I just don't read their books because their words are so long. I speak Dutch, it's true, or Flemish, but their words are so long, it takes me forever to get through those books. So that's basically what I'm surrounded by here when I go into bookstores. And then French, if I go into, like, I live right outside of Brussels in Flanders. But if I go to Brussels, everything is, a lot of it is in French, and they're all reading mainly books that are published in France in general. Some are published in Belgium, but I guess it's different just because I'm reading a lot in English right now. So yeah,
it's the translation. I think for me, are we doing good enough job to translate the books that are published in different languages and bringing them? So for me, like in Arabic, there's a lot of great books, and now there's a movement to translate them into English, and I'm actually seeing them at Barnes and Noble, which is great. So when it comes to like translation, do you think we're doing enough job of bringing these stories everywhere? You know, cross culture.
Yeah, I wish we did more translation, because I think that does help readers really read the books. I'd love to read your books. If they're written in Arabic, for example, I can't read them, but if they're translated into English, I could. So having more translation would be great to let people read books from other cultures as well. And that's a process, though. I have read books that were written in French, translated into English, but really not well done. And the same thing, read books in English that were translated into French, and just, it really almost massacred the story. And oftentimes the author doesn't even know that. Their publisher usually is the one who hires the translator. They get them translated, and then it goes out, and then they wonder, why is the book not selling? And it's because it just sometimes can ruin the story. But other people, like Isabel Allende, I love her books, right? And she writes in Spanish. They're translated into English. She has a very good translator who she's been working with for years, I think. And they're just so well translated. So this story is just beautiful. Like Paulo Coelho as well, his books, from Brazil, they're translated into all these different languages, and they're done in such a way that you can't even tell that they've been translated. And that's the job. I was a translator for 20 years, actually. So I know a lot about translation, but I didn't do fiction and nonfiction. I actually was doing more scientific work.
Okay.
But translation, to me, it's a very sensitive topic, because some people think, I can translate, but no, they can't. There's really a lot of training behind it.
Yeah, that's true. I just finished Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Love in the Time of Cholera, and I thought that translation was really good. I mean, it was a very long book, but I finished it. Not really a summer read, but anyways. Okay, I'm going to talk about writing in a language that is not your own, and how the level of confidence and the imposter syndrome. So I do also book coaching, and some of my clients, English is not their native language. They tend to be mostly from the Middle East. And there's always this imposter syndrome that they cannot do it. And even some of them been living, in English speaking countries for a long time. They're educated in English speaking universities, but there is this still imposter syndrome. I mean, I got over that, but I have to admit that I had it in the past. But I guess the older I get, I stop caring about many things. But do you feel that the international students that want to write in a language that's not their own, especially in English, because they want to have an international audience, suffer from that imposter syndrome, and how do you help them through it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. They do. And I know what it's like because I actually studied in different countries. So I know it's in different languages myself. And when I would turn in papers, especially in Japan, I studied in Japan and it was all in Japanese. That was hard, turning in papers and knowing that I wasn't born Japanese. So it was really hard to do. So imagine coming to the States, for example, like you, and writing in English. And also if you're writing a book, for example, that's kind of a scary thing. And there is an imposter syndrome, and it is real. So what I do is I help them realize that most people have not done what they've done. Most people have not come from another culture and, started writing and really writing for an audience and, seriously taking this serious. And people are worried. Sometimes they say, well, yeah, but my writing's going to be different. It won't sound right, And I say, well, that's your unique style. That's your voice too. And it's okay. That's what editors are for, because editors can come in and help, especially, copy editors or line editors or even proofreaders to help fix that.
Yeah.
So as a coach, I motivate my international clients, especially with that, no matter what language they're writing in.
Yeah. And now with AI tools like Grammarly, I mean, it can catch a lot of stuff. And like for me, when they mentioned that, and the first thing I say, let's worry about the story now. We'll fix the grammar later. What matters now is the story, if it's fiction, the character development, or fiction, the outline. We'll talk about fixing. I mean, and that's like the easy, for me, I see it, that's the easy problem to fix. The book itself, the content is the harder problem to fix, because the other one, you can always hire a copy editor and end of problem. All right. I want to pivot a bit and talk about a topic that many writers or authorpreneurs suffer from or struggle with, let's say, which is marketing. And so for you, whether it's marketing your book or marketing your business to get, like, I guess, more coaching clients, what have you been doing that you felt really worked for you, like with the highest ROI?
Well, I think when I was, when my first book was published in 2017, and the second book was already ready to go. So the sequel came out in 2018. And then it was before COVID. And so I was invited to a lot of events to promote the books.
Yeah.
So I went to these events and I would speak at these events. I was asked to speak. I was interviewed, and I would sign the books. And that worked really well. So I went all over, and oftentimes I initiated it. It wasn't my publisher. So I would say, oh, I'll go here. And I, said, I would like to speak. I would like to talk about this. I was on panels on inclusive writing, in literature, inclusive representation. So people from different cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, sexual orientation, gender, that kind of thing. So I did a lot of panel work and just a lot of outreach. I did some social media, and that was not comfortable for me, but I did it. I did not hire a publicist. And if you have the money, that's a great thing to do, is to hire a publicist and let them do that, especially if you're not comfortable with social media. But I would do blog posts, and I was invited to really a lot of events. I did over 50 events in those first 2 years when my books came out. And some were in England, and most were in the United States. And some were in Belgium as well, in bookstores and other things. And then when COVID hit, everything stopped. I had to stop. We couldn't go do that. And that was really hard. I did do one online event, but I didn't feel like that was the same as being in person and signing books for people and giving these talks. And I think that's a great way to do it if you can just go out there. But most writers I know are introverts, so it's hard for them to get out there and do that. It's scary. The first time I did it, I was so scared. I remember. No, I'm not, but I was.
Yeah. So how do you get these speaking gigs if you want to advise an author? Because many authors say like their best sales were when they were actually out there. But do you reach out to organization, or do they reach out to you? How like, give us your secret sauce.
It was kind of both. The first one was a friend of mine, and I had done some editing for her book, and her book came out right around the time mine did, my first one. And so she said, and this was in the States, she goes, well, I have a gig, in a library. You want to join me? And I said, okay. So there were 3 of us, and that's how it started. And then my publisher actually arranged quite a few other ones. So I went to Boston and did some of those. And I thought, while I was there, I'll just contact this bookstore And that's kind of what I did. I went to libraries, bookstores, most of the libraries that I knew, and even those I didn't know. I drop off some books. I said, "Do you take donations?" I said, "Oh, by the way, I don't mind speaking." "Oh, really? Okay." And so we would organize it that way. So I did a lot myself. Or like when I came to Brussels, I was living in California, but I came to Brussels and I went to two or three major bookstores, and the two of them said yes. So I was able to present twice at each one and sell books that way. And I used to be a graphic designer, so I love to design stuff. So I would design stuff, and then we'd put up flyers and make business cards. And so it was a lot of effort on my part, I guess. But if you're not a designer and you're not really that motivated, and if you have the money, then it's good to hire a publicist or somebody who can help you. Traditional publishing houses, as you know, now don't always have the budget to help, especially authors that are just starting out. They don't have the capacity. And agents will help too, but the publicity part, I think, oftentimes falls on the writer. So having a platform and doing a lot of social media is helpful if you can do that.
Hey, quick break before we dive back in. If you've been thinking about writing your book but do not know where to start, my Write Your Book in 120 Days coaching program can help. It's a step-by-step system that takes you from idea to finished manuscript, with structure, accountability, and personalized feedback every step of the way. You can learn more about the program at natashatynes.com/bookcoaching. That's natashatynes.com/bookcoaching. And if you're ready to talk about your project, you can book a free clarity call with me. The link is in the show notes. All right, back to the episode. So, would you ever consider self-publishing?
I think I would. If this book now that I wrote, that I finished, that I love, it took me 7 years to write. It's about dance as well. And so I did a lot of dance, pulled a lot of muscles.
Oh, wow.
Really fun though. So if I don't find a publisher, I've looked a little bit, but not really. But I think I could do that. I know it's actually more lucrative for many writers now. They're finding that the trends have changed and it's more lucrative actually to publish yourself. You get more money that way. So I just like the community with a traditional publisher, just having that community of people, all the authors together doing things. I just kind of love that. But if that doesn't work, I might publish it myself.
I want to talk a bit about coaching writers. What are, you think, the main pain points that they struggle with? Because is your coaching mindset and like accountability, or do you actually edit their work?
I do both. I think the hardest part, you were talking about imposter syndrome, and I would say most of the people who come to my book coaching, it's the imposter syndrome. They feel like, who am I to write this book?
Okay.
What is this story about? And it's oftentimes things right here behind them, like this voice saying, who do you think you are? This is rubbish. That kind of thing happens all the time. So it's a lot of time convincing them that yes, their story needs to be told if that's what they feel and how they write. So it's oftentimes helping them get the motivation to write, the discipline. Because sometimes they say, oh, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. Yet we meet every week. And I say, well, what did you do this week? And so there's the accountability part and the motivating, and also the helping them with the self-worth aspect. I'm also a self-worth coach, so I can help them with that too. Just feeling a little bit better about writing. If they have kids, for example, yes, writing is a profession. Being an author is a profession. So taking that seriously, that kind of thing. And then also the editing part. So on top of that, if they want a developmental editor, that's what I do. If they want copy editing, I can help with that too. But basically, it's really getting them to write and to enjoy writing. And if they don't enjoy it, then I say, well, maybe it's a good idea not to continue, because if you're not finding joy in what you're doing, maybe there's something else you might want to do. And they agree with me. Don't you agree with me on that?
I do. I mean, for me, like when I was younger, I guess I would want to quit writing. This is awful. I can't do it. But then I realized that I cannot not write. And when you reach that stage, no matter how hard you try, there's a drive inside you that will always make you sit down and write. And I think having that drive is sometimes you just have to bring it out of people, because what happens, it is so shadowed by the self-doubt and what we tell our mind that it can paralyze people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need someone to kind of exorcise these thoughts out of your head to actually make you sit down and write. It's fascinating how it all boils down to mindset, not necessarily talent or anything like that. It's how you train your mindset. So you mentioned your writing clients, which kind of, I think it's different than people who buy your book. And how do you market your business so that that potential clients can find you? Because I honestly, like struggle with that. I mean, I have a writing or coaching business, mostly focusing on mindset. And I mostly like push stuff on social media and YouTube and whatever, but it's still, I'm still struggling to find clients. What do you do to find these clients?
Well, it's not easy. It's true. It's not easy, especially like right now, there's a lot going on in the world. And so some people are a little bit hesitant to pay money, to do coaching.
Yeah.
But basically word of mouth. So for me, like I said, I've been teaching writing here in Brussels since 2006. And then I went and lived in Japan and back in the States. And so I was teaching there too. But it was people have taken a seminar of mine or a workshop or a course, and they see how I teach and how much, the knowledge that I have. And then they say, well, I would like to I have this project. I want to work on a book or on this manuscript or a story. So they'll contact me that way because they've already met me in the courses and they see how I work with people. Or else it could be just a friend of a friend, or the husband of a friend or that kind of thing. Like, oh, my husband's been wanting to write a book for a long time and he keeps saying that, but why doesn't he contact you? So the wife might contact me, or the same thing. So it's usually word of mouth or people taking my courses, or like I said, I put some things on LinkedIn sometimes, just a little bit, like blog posts. I tend to write about nature a lot and how nature provides a lot of solace to me and how I think it's very nurturing. So I'll write about that, and then writers might connect with that, and I'll put my photos up and they'll, oh, nice photo. And then they'll contact me that way. But it is word of mouth mainly. And people I know, people who have taken my writing courses, that's basically how I haven't done a lot of social media, I must say.
Yeah, so it's not social media. I don't know. I feel sometimes we put a lot of effort on social media. I think it's because it's cool to be on social media. But maybe at the end of the day, it's actually connections. It's not social media, but it's interesting. I'm like starting to learn that lesson slowly, that just go offline and meet people and not just spend all your time, fighting with Canva to create like the best image for social media posts or something like that.
I think it is connections, because I met someone online who actually introduced us. So we met through a connection, but it was online.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of do both, I think. But if I know when I first started going on social media, which I wasn't doing, and the publicist for my publisher said to me then, if you're not comfortable with Facebook or with Instagram or any of these things, don't force it. Don't force it. It's okay. Don't, a lot of writers aren't comfortable. And I said, oh, good. I'm not comfortable. So I did a little bit and I do a little bit, but it's not like my favorite thing. It's true. But I do know that if I have a course coming up or if I have a book coming out or something, that's really the way to reach certain people who really are online, and that's how they connect. And so everyone's different. And I think respecting this difference. Some people like online, some people like in person. I'm lucky that when I go to an event, and I don't go to a lot of events recently, but when I go, I tend to sit next to the right person, apparently. And they'll go, oh, do you have a card? And I just tend to always have my cards with me, and I'll give them my card and they're like, oh, and then they'll contact me. And then there's a client right there. Luckily, that happens to me all the time. And I think because years and years ago, I took a workshop, and in the workshop, somebody said, just imagine sitting next to or standing next to the person you're supposed to meet at that event, and that will happen. So before I go to an event, I oftentimes imagine standing or sitting next to the person I'm supposed to meet. And actually that happens. And the person comes to me. I don't know who they are. They ask for my card, and then they're my client. So I should probably go to more events.
That is very true. All right. So before we conclude, what is your top advice for someone who's struggling with finishing their book? and whether they're in the US or international, like a universal advice that you would give someone who is really struggling to finish?
I would say keep going, because if they had the idea of writing the book and they're already over halfway through, then actually keep going. Just keep going. Maybe take a break. Sometimes, you can get writer's block if you go every day and you kind of push. Go outside, like Julia Cameron said in her book, The Artist's Way, go outside, do artist dates. So where you can get this creativity that comes in and then do some writing about that. Or hire a book coach like you and me, who we're here for the accountability part, but also the motivation part. And also we might spot errors or something that needs to be changed in the book, or just advising them on how they write. So just not give up, because so many people want to write books and so many people don't write the book. And when they start, many people don't finish. So it's a huge daunting thing. Maybe starting with short stories, or, that's helpful, or poems even, and then working towards the book.
Yeah. Well, this is great. And how can people reach you? If they want to hire you as a coach or read your books, what's the best way to reach you, Anne?
I think the best way is probably either on LinkedIn, so at Cross Culture Horizons, so under my name, Anne Randerson, and, Cross Culture Horizons is my website.com. But also they can, send me an email as well. And we can put the email in the notes if you'd like. And then,
sure.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, in the show notes.
Yeah, either way.
Yeah,
that's probably.
Yeah, I don't usually put it because I don't want to spam people, but I usually just link to the website.
Yeah, that's what I think. Just linking to the website, I think, is best. And also under my, if they're interested in my books, so it's mickeybrent.com. So Mickey, like Mickey Mouse. People make fun of that, but it's mickeybrent.com.
No, I like it, and I love that it's set like in different international settings. It's fun. It like gives people the vibe of they're on a vacation, which is nice.
Yeah, they are. And when people have read the books and they've gone to Brussels and they said, wow, it's just like in the books, and it is, because I lived there for so long and I wrote the book riding on my bicycle. I rode through the streets all the time, and then I would ride.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for years in the rain, because it rains a lot here. But
very European, very European of you.
Thank you.
On your bicycle. All right. So this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And, I enjoyed our chat, and I'm sure, the audience will love your tips and would love to connect with you. And for anyone who's listening or watching, thank you for joining us for another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. And until we meet again.
Thanks, Natasha. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Thank you for tuning in to Read and Write with Natasha. I'm your host, Natasha Tynes. If today's episode inspired you in any way, please take the time to review the podcast. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with fellow book lovers. Until next time, happy reading, happy writing. Hey, just a quick pause to share something I'm really excited about. My new novel, Karma Unleashed, is finally out. It's a supernatural suburban thriller set between the Middle East and the American suburbs, weaving together themes of identity, immigration, and mystical visions. If you love stories with heart, mystery, and a touch of the mystical word, this one is for you. You can grab your copy now. Just search Karma Unleashed by Natasha Tynes on Amazon. And of course, the link is in the show notes. Thanks for supporting indie authors like me. All right, back to the show.